Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about question number 187 for DevOps and SRE interviews. The reason I'm making these videos for you folks is so if you're in the market for a DevOps and SRE role and you're applying and you might get interviews or you have interviews, I would like you to be ready to answer questions of all the important topics and at least have some depth in each topic so that when you go into the interview for a technical interview, you feel ready, you feel prepared to handle the interview and you're not nervous. That's the goal of these videos I'm making. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. It's nothing for you, but actually makes a huge difference in my channel. So I would really appreciate if you did that. I did some research on LinkedIn based on 35 job descriptions. These are the 15 topics that are most important based on data that I actually gathered, right? And the ones at the top, the topics like cloud and AWS and CI/CD, they're more important than the ones at the bottom. But even the bottom ones are not ignorable. So, of course, you should spend more time on the first five or six topics, time and energy learning about them. But you should also spend at least some time learning about the top nine or so topics. So don't ignore them, please. So today we're on topic number one, the cloud/AWS. We're gonna go over a possible question about AWS on a DevOps and SRE interview. The question today is, how do you ensure the reliability and scalability of an application running in AWS, given it is built on microservices architecture using ECS, Amazon's Elastic Container Service is basically Kubernetes, or actually not Kubernetes. It's like it's a place where you can actually run containers. Um, mm, and the traffic is on that application is actually managed by an ALB on the front end, right? That's the application you were talking about. And now the question for you is, how do you ensure that this application is reliable and scalable, right? That's the question here. The interviewer is looking for your idea of really what's called operationalization, meaning if you build a service or application, how do you make sure it is runnable for production, right? There are many factors that go into that. The interview is looking for at least 3 or 4 factors that you should be able to talk about, and how are you going to do that in AWS. That gives him or her the confidence that you've managed applications on that and container-based applications in production. That's what the interview is looking for. So before I move to the answer, just a quick reminder: the Flight Sim Spencer is my career advisor. He is very passionate about helping people who are in the job market. I'm not financially affiliated with him, so this is not an ad. The only reason I bring this up is because he's really into helping people who are in the job market and struggling. And he gives out 1 hour free session to anybody who wants to talk to him. Okay, so first of all, scaling. How do you scale for such an application that runs on ECS? Use what ECS has already built in auto scaling based on some metric that is gathered on CloudWatch, like CPU, memory, or request count. So you need to do that. You need to make sure the auto scaling is enabled for this service. You also need to configure the ALB with target tracking policy. What that means is some way the ALB should know which backend container to give the or pod to give the send the traffic to, based on how used that particular node or pod is, right? So you want your ALB to be intelligent in that way. So that's scaling for you. Now, how do you ensure this highly available, right? And it's fault tolerant, meaning if something goes wrong, the application still serves customers. How do you do that? So one way of doing that is make sure these ECS tasks, basically, when Amazon says ECS tasks, what they really mean is basically like a container in a pod, right? You configure it and you give it some memory, you give it some CPU, and you give it an image. Uh-oh, so I just lost power here. Um, okay, so anyhow, so you want to have these run on multiple availability zones. So if one zone goes down, the application is still up. Now, you also want to enable ALB health check so that if a backend container dies, your traffic is sent to somewhere else. You also want to leverage elastic load balancing so that you can send traffic to multi-regions if that's required for application. For most applications, this is overkill. Multi-AZ is just fine. But sometimes if it's a super critical application, you may want to send traffic to multi-regions. Now, above all this, or not above, but along with all this, you want to have monitoring. Without monitoring, you don't really have the foundation for scaling and high availability. So for that, you want to use CloudWatch to gather metrics from your ECS services. You may want to decide that you want to use X-Ray for request tracking, right? Tracing is basically like an APM solution. Also, you want to send logs to something like Elasticstack or an AWS Open Search Service for deeper analysis of logs, right? So these are the three pillars, if you will, of how to make an application running on ECS scalable, highly available, and have monitoring and troubleshooting that goes with it. All right, I hope you found this useful. If you have a particular question, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can just leave a comment below, and I will see you next time.